Hey, welcome. I'm Nick Blevins. We're going to talk about the nonprofit security grant. And if you're like me, you probably never heard of it before another church told me about it about 6 or 7 years ago. And it's actually a grant put on by FEMA through your local state that allows nonprofits to get up to $200,000 for securing their facilities. So in this webinar, we're going to talk about what is that grant? What can it be used for? What can't it be used for? Is it a right fit for your church? What does the application process look like? I'm sure when you saw, $200,000 for church security in free grants, you probably thought this is a scam, but it's not. And I heard about it years ago. In fact, I think when it started, it was much less per church, like 60 grand or something like that, which is still great. And now over the years with inflation, I guess, and everything else, the current grants are 200,000 per organization. It's actually per address. And we'll get into all that and more. So let's jump in. I'm actually going to share some slides that we'll talk through during this webinar. Hopefully, I'm hoping this will be really helpful for your church, and hopefully you can use it, apply for it, and get it, and then use it for security for your church. If you're like most churches, like my church, we got it. We used it primarily for cameras, doors, alarms, and then some other things as well. And so I just want as many churches as possible to hear about it. A little bit about me. My name is Nick Blevins. I'm the pastor of Next Gen and operations at my church here in Maryland, co-founder of a company called Ministry Boost, where we help provide training and coaching and resources to church staff, mostly in the kids ministry and student ministry space, and wrote a book called The Volunteer Playbook to help churches recruit more volunteers, build healthy volunteer cultures. That's mostly what we do. Me and my friends who are business partners that started Ministry Boost, we mostly help serve the church and help them recruit volunteers and build healthy volunteer cultures and excel in creating great family ministries. Like that's the world we have lived in. But we fell into this grant and learned about it from another friend. One of my friends, co-founder of Ministry Boost, worked at a church that had gotten this grant 2 times before he even worked there. And I think they got it a third time while he was there. And so once we heard about that, I was like, oh, we got to work on this. And then once my church was into it and got it, we said, we got to help as many people, as many churches as we can find out about this, because it's very rare that I tell a church about this and they've already heard about it. Like that almost never happens to me. It does every now and then. And usually if it does, it's because that church is connected to some denomination or network that knew about it and then helped them learn about it. So if you're watching this, you probably never heard of it, or you just want more information. And so I hope it helps you learn all about the grant and hopefully apply for it and hopefully get it. So what is it? It's a grant that exists to help nonprofit organizations, so churches are included, but it's not just churches, prevent and protect against terrorist attacks and other extremist attacks. Some fast facts about the grant. It is a FEMA grant, but it's administered through your local state. They call it a state administrative agency. Just like everything in the government, they'll abbreviate it SAA. And there are some different rules and processes and things like that, state to state, but largely some core pieces are the same. It was started in 2005. I know in a recent year, they had 5,200 applications nationally for $600 million. And recently, the total available fund has been more around 300 million. Some years it's 300, some years it's 270. In 2024, they actually did a bonus round at the end of the year and added another, I don't remember the exact number, but it was basically another bonus round to apply for it. In a normal year, it comes out once a year and it opens up and then you can apply for it. And then it takes some time to announce the winners. But one thing to note right away, in that recent year where there was 5,200 applications for 600 million, 300 million was granted, meaning about 50% of the organizations that applied for it got it. So the odds are pretty good. And what you'll learn is the odds get better if you get help and you apply for it the right way and you don't make some simple mistakes. So if you want to learn more about it, just Google Nonprofit Security Grant Program, end up on the FEMA website. It's not the easiest thing to navigate. Maybe I'll share my screen or something. We can look at that. But usually the latest information is there. A lot of times there's more information than you'd ever want. Although with the help of like AI today, you could probably feed it in. We'll give you actually a tip on that later. But Google that. You can read about it on the site there. Who can apply? Registered 501c3 nonprofits. So houses of worship, churches, and actually there's a stipulation. Some people don't understand this. In fact, even people that work for your state and even the government sometimes don't understand this because they changed this not too long ago. But churches that aren't 501c3s can also apply. Just by being a church, you fit the bill. Educational facilities, medical facilities, senior centers, care facilities, community and social service groups, camps. Churches, again, can apply no matter what, but all the other ones need to be 501c3s. So what can you get? So let's say you apply for the grant and you get it. You get 200 grand, let's say. What can you buy with that? You can get security cameras, alarms, access control. Think like on the door, right? I don't have my wallet on me, but I have a card now ever since we put this in at our church. We have just those little cards like at a hotel or whatever that gets us in the door. And the system we use actually also uses an app with Bluetooth. So I actually don't even take my phone out of my pocket when I get to the door. That's great when you're carrying stuff, and you need the door to unlock. So that's what most churches are probably going to use it for, is those first three things. But there's a lot more that you can get: barriers, fences. One church we helped get it in Illinois literally spent the entire grant on one fence to go around their property. Bollards, which are like those concrete pillars that are used to stop cars from driving into a building. Blast-resistant doors, windows, the covering that you can put on glass. Contract security. Training. Now, again, training has to fit kind of what the training is for. It can't be training that wouldn't apply to helping secure it. And then also some of the money can go towards the management and administration of the grant up to 5%, meaning, 200 grand, 5% is 10 grand, up to 10 grand could go towards paying whoever's helping administer and run that grant for your church. We did not do that in my church because I felt like it's just part of my job, but you can do that. What can you not get? You can't get anything force related. So think lethal or less lethal weapons or training, right? You can't use the money to train your security team how to use their weapons. You can't use it specifically for like license plate readers or facial recognition software. You might find a security system that could do that, and you could use it for that system. You just can't ask for it for the express purpose of using the license plate reading or facial recognition software. And the reason for that is those laws are quite different, not even state to state, county to county. Like I live in Maryland, where Baltimore City has a different law around facial recognition software on cameras than does the Baltimore County and some other counties. So FEMA just doesn't want to get involved in that. So they're like, you can't use it for that. You can't use it for general expenses to your organization. This is a weird one, but you can't use it for key safes or knock boxes. Think like when you're looking to buy a house and there's the box on the house that has a code and you get in. You can't use it for proof of concepts or studies, which really just means you can't use it for something that doesn't exist yet. So one of the questions that'll come up a lot, we've helped a number of churches where they'll tell us, hey, our building's getting built right now. Can we get it? And unfortunately, the answer is no until it's up and running. Your building has to be built and in use to use it. You can't get it. Unfortunately, you can't get it if it's not ready yet. So it's one of those things you might have to wait on if you want to try for the grant. So what is involved with applying for the grant? So one, you need to determine your state administrative agency. What this is every state has a department usually that deals with all grants, but depends on, your state. Like my state, this department deals with all of the grants. And this grant is one of them that they help run. And you have to think of your state administrative agency as kind of like your agent, ambassador. Like they're the ones that apply to FEMA on your behalf. So it's this, and it's confusing, but the way it works is like FEMA are the ones that run the grant. The money is allocated there. They then allocate that to states are going to get a piece of that. But the way it works is the states actually apply and you apply to the state. Then the state applies on your behalf. So you never really interact with FEMA. You just interact with your state. And it's based on your physical building locations. So what address and what state are you in? You can find your state administrative agency on the FEMA website. If you Google Nonprofit Security Grant Program, click around there, you can find that. That's one of the first things you should do probably is contact your SSA just to say, hey, we want to apply for this grant. What do I need to know? An important one is to determine your state administrative agency deadline. So the way this works is FEMA, it's quite confusing. Don't get me wrong. I just worked with a church the other day where their state doesn't understand it. Like they're telling them bad information because they don't understand what's happening. So the way it works is FEMA announces that the grant is going to be available. And what they mean is to states. Sometimes, like this year, for example, they put a deadline on it. And the deadline they announced was August 11th. But that was just for the states to say, yes, we want in. It really has nothing to do with us as churches. And then the church, eventually FEMA will set a deadline for when the applications have to be in. And let's say this year, I don't know yet, but let's just say this year that was September 30. Well, then every state knows that the deadline for them to get those applications in is September 30. So they pick their own deadline earlier, September 15, let's say. That would be your date. So it's important for you, and again, it'll be different in every state. If you are in Texas, I want to start a petition because they, side note just for Texas people, their deadline is always March 15th, I think, or something like that, no matter when FEMA announces it. I don't know how they do that because they don't even know when the FEMA deadline is. So if that's you, no worries. I'd start working on it now, planning for next year. But most other states I've ever worked with, they pick a date, like a normal date that is a couple weeks before the FEMA deadline. So contact your state administrative agency, figure out when that deadline is. Like literally while I'm recording this right now, states don't know because they don't know the FEMA deadline yet, but it's good to be in touch. Keep an eye on that. Sometimes you can get on an email list in your state, which is great because that they'll tell you what you need to know. I find their email lists are better than most of their websites. Their websites oftentimes aren't updated or they're hard to find. But if you can get on their email list, that is helpful. Some states require more things to submit in the application than FEMA does. So that's another thing you want to figure out if that is true in your state. Another step you're going to take is you have to figure out what funding stream is what they call it you're in. Essentially, they divide every state into an urban areas and state. They should call it non-urban. I don't know why they don't do that. That would make a lot more sense to me. But they essentially call them urban areas and state areas. If your church is near a large city, then you're almost certainly in the urban area. If some states don't even have an urban area, I'm trying to think of a state. I think it was might have been Nebraska I worked with doesn't even have one. I don't know. Don't hold me to that. But most states do, and you can figure it out on the website if if you're in the urban area or the state. And the reason it matters is it's the same application, but there's a different one for urban and there's a different one for state, and they divide the money in half. And so you have to apply for the correct one based on where your address is. There's something called a UEI number that you have to get, Unique Entity ID. It's just an organizational ID used by the government and required as part of your application. You would go to sam.gov and look for Get a Unique Entity ID there. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. And then, when the window's open, you'll apply through your local state administrative agency using what they call the investment justification document. That's essentially the application. IJ, a lot of times, again, with everything in the government, they'll abbreviate it. So they'll call that the IJ. That's an official PDF created by FEMA, then sent to your state, and then your state sends it to you. They look very similar every year, slight tweaks. Typically, the first page in the upper right corner will have a kind of like not an expiration date, but essentially an expiration date. That's how you'll know if it's the right one, because it would be months after yours is due. So that's how you'll actually apply. I spoke to this a little bit already, but in terms of the timing of this grant in a normal year, the federal budget has to get passed for the current fiscal year. That took a long time this year, which is why this thing is so late. In a normal year, this would be like announced in March-ish by FEMA. FEMA would set their deadline for the states. Let's call it June 1st. Your state would make an announcement like in April, early April, and say our deadline's May 15. Like that would be a normal year. This year was very not normal because it took a long time to pass the federal budget, and that kind of is the first domino. After that happens, there's a notice of funding opportunity. That just happened literally days before I'm recording that for this year, and they have not yet published their FEMA deadline for the states, but usually it's about 60 days after they make that announcement, and then that application period opens up for anywhere from 30 to 80 days where your state's saying, hey, here's our deadline. This is how long you have. And then After that, the deadlines pass and you submit to your state, and then your state submits to FEMA. It takes another 3 months in my experience. Like again, a normal year, the FEMA deadline might be June 1st, and then they might announce the recipients in September 10th or something like that. That would be a kind of a normal year. This year, being that everything was later, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they're not announcing until 2026, which again, that's not fun. You'd love for this to go fast and get approved and get the funds, but that is unfortunately not how it works. Okay, so applications, your state administrative agency requires and reviews at least 3 things. And these are the 3 things FEMA requires. They want a mission statement. It's really just used to validate what category your organization is. So are you a church? Are you a school? Are you a camp? They just want to know. And so they ask for your mission statement. I put ours on letterhead in my submission, just with our church's mission. That's it. It was that simple. A completed vulnerability assessment and a completed investment justification, which is that IJ, that it is the application essentially. So we'll talk about that vulnerability assessment here in a little bit too. Now, FEMA just reviews one thing. All they look at is the completed investment justification, the application itself. That outlines the investment and the relevant projects, includes summaries of information provided to your state administrative agency with a breakdown of your proposed budget, the timeline, and your plan. Now, the tip is don't refer to other documents in your IJ other than the vulnerability assessment, because at least they know that exists somewhere. You don't want to refer to anything else because they don't get anything else. So you don't want to apply and say, see the attached map of our facility or something like that. You don't want to do that because they're not going to see it. So you want to write as if everything is in the IJ and that is all they're going to know. Your state could ask for more. Keep that in mind. Those 3 things every state asks for. I have worked with churches in states where they want to see your 501c3 thing, or I don't know, different things. But those 3 things they always ask for. So behind the scenes, I kind of mentioned this, but just to go over it again, nonprofits like your church would submit applications to your state. The state reviews and scores them based on a matrix. There's like a set matrix that they score off of. Then the state submits those with some notes to FEMA. FEMA reviews and scores them. And then FEMA decides who's getting the grants, who awards the grants. And then the DHS secretary receives and approves that final list. And that's when it's announced. And you'll hear about it through your state. You don't hear about it through FEMA. So your state, after you applied 3-4 months later, sometimes longer, they'll announce who got the grant in the state. Some states I've even seen will publish everybody that got it. Some states just let you know if you got it or not. Okay, some tips. Grant writers could be helpful, but be careful. The nonprofit has to be responsible for it. Fully complete everything you submit. I mean, one of the biggest problems we see churches run into is they make errors in the application. They don't finish it. They do something wrong. They use the wrong form. And that simple stuff can get you denied for no other reason than it was just a mistake. Ask for allowable expenses only, meaning, again, there's only certain things you're allowed to get. We talked about some of those. On the FEMA website, you can see a full list. If you ask for something that's not allowed, you'll get denied. And then only apply if you are a nonprofit, and don't apply on behalf of another organization. Now that there is a little caveat to that, because recently they introduced a consortium idea where like one organization can apply for multiple. Now, but they all have to be nonprofits. I don't see a reason why a church would really do that. I mean, you could. I don't know if a church felt like they could split some of the funds with 2 other churches, and I don't know. It's not what I would recommend. I'd recommend you apply on your own and you don't even get into that. I haven't mentioned it yet, but most years, one organization can get up to 3 grants in 1 year, but they have to be 3 different physical addresses. So like think of that church that I mentioned in Illinois that got the fence. That was a large multi-site church with 9 campuses, I think. And so they when they went to apply and we helped them, they were going to just apply for the one campus because time was running short. They had to get it done fast. And I encourage them, no, you really want to apply for 3, because if you get it 1 year, you can get it again down the road, but it's harder to get. And typically they'll make you wait a few years at least. And so I said, you really want to ask for all 3, like 3 of your locations and the full amount this year. That way, if you get it, 3 of them get it, right? And then if you have to wait 3 years, you can focus on other campuses. But they did, fortunately, and they got it for all 3. And they, for the one campus, they just used it for a fence. So if you're multi-site, if you have buildings that have different distinct addresses, you can apply for up to 3 in 1 year, which is more like, that's $600,000. My church, for example, has a building that we own, and then a building where our office is in the same business park, 2 different physical addresses. We got 2 grants. Back when we got it, it was $150,000 per address. I shouldn't have done this, but we did not ask for the full amount at the second location. So we got $250,000 total, 150 at one, 100 at the other. Some more tips: start early and do things simultaneously. I'm going to talk through some steps to take here in a minute, and you kind of want to do multiple things at one time if you can. And then I mentioned the vulnerability assessment. Let me explain that here, and then we can talk about this tip. The vulnerability assessment is an assessment you need done on your facility that identifies all the vulnerabilities. And that is required to apply. And everything you ask for has to be connected to a vulnerability that has been outlined in your assessment. There's a self-assessment that you can do using a tool that the government provides. There's an online version. There's like a PDF, offline digital version. And you can do that assessment. You could have like a local police or former military do it. There's also DHS agents that can do it, but you have to get that vulnerability assessment done, and you can only ask for funds for things mentioned in the vulnerability assessment. So for example, when ours was done, we mentioned that we don't have access control on our doors. We're using keys. Keys are easily duplicated. That is obviously a little bit of a security gap. It's a vulnerability. We mentioned that, and then we asked for money to electrify and put access control on all of our main doors, and we got it. I made a mistake where we wanted to get contract security for some of our bigger services during the year, think Christmas, Easter, stuff like that. We have our own security team, but for those bigger times, we were going to pay for contract security. We have done that in the past out of our budget, but we knew we could ask for that. But what I didn't catch was that the person that did our vulnerability assessment didn't mention that. So then when I asked for it, fortunately, my state was smart enough and kind enough to notice that I asked for something, contract security, that was not in my vulnerability assessment. And they told me I was going to have to remove it. Otherwise, it would get denied. So I removed it. And that's part of why I didn't ask for the full 150, because some of the money, it wasn't 50,000, but let's call it 20 for contract security, I had to take out at the last minute because it wasn't in the vulnerability assessment. So everything has to be in there that you want to ask for. Contractors shouldn't be, I don't know if can't's the right word, but they shouldn't be sole sourced. You want to avoid, anything that might look like conflict of interest or anything like that. When you apply, they're not asking you who, like what bid you got and where you got them from, but there is accountability there, and you just, you want to be above reproach. You also want to know what are the right prices, all that stuff. So I'd encourage you, even if you have somebody in your church that's going to do some of this work or is in this business, get a few quotes and make sure everything aligns, is logical, reasonable, and attainable. I mean, part of what they're saying yes to is yes, this looks like a good plan for your church. You're going to use this money well. Looks like we can trust you. That's why they would award it to you. If something doesn't make sense, seems unreasonable, or there's no way you could do that, they're just going to deny it. Like they're not even going to figure out what's going on there. Don't ask for more money than the total. It's like $200,000. Again, you fill the whole thing out and you're like, oh, can we get 220? Failed. You know what I mean? Like you're not going to get it. You have to use Adobe Acrobat to edit the investment justification form. You have to. You'll know because if you open it in something else, usually it'll give you like a warning, like basically, hey, you can't open it in this program. And if you, on your computer, if you double click it, a lot of times they'll just try to open it in your computer's native PDF viewer, which probably isn't Adobe Acrobat, and so it'll give you that little warning. So you need to download Adobe Acrobat, and then make sure you're using that to open the file. Get some help from others for sure. You don't want to do this alone. You want your vulnerability assessment to be updated. They'll tell you within 5 years. You want to stay updated with your state, contacting them, emailing them, figuring out dates, asking any questions, and like I mentioned, avoiding any conflicts of interest. Okay, so I already talked through the vulnerability assessment. It can be done by local police, DHS, retired military. FEMA does have that document that you can use to do your own self-assessment. I would recommend using that even if you have local police or retired military. Do that. You have to get a different assessment for every physical address. So again, my church has 2 locations. We did 2 vulnerability assessments, 2 applications, 2 mission statement documents, actually, even though it's the same mission statement. So when I applied for our grant, I basically sent 2 applications almost, because it was one for this address, one for that address. Make sure the assessment address addresses everything you think it should address. Remember, we mentioned that, but you don't want to be like me and not have contract security in there, and now you can't ask for it. So I would recommend you make your own list of what you want to get, and then give that to whoever's doing the vulnerability assessment to make sure they hit it in their assessment. Only items identified in the assessment can be asked for in your application. Again, we talked about that. So you just want to make sure those match. This is a simple thing, but everything has to match. The address on your mission statement needs to match exactly the address on your vulnerability assessment, which needs to match exactly the address on your church and the investment justification, the application. If there's a slight difference, even 8007C and that one says 8007B, again, anything that's a little bit wrong or causes confusion could get you denied, or, fail's not the right term, but you could not get the grant. Our church got this grant. We applied in 2022. I wanted to apply long before the pandemic. That's when I first heard about it, but then that changed things and was off my mind and all that. Applied in 2022, did not get it, even though our application was good, there weren't any errors, and applied the next year, 2023, and got it. Now, in my state, in Maryland, I've helped a number of other churches get it now. I firmly believe there's some kind of backlog. I might be wrong. I'm sure they would tell me I'm wrong, but I don't know any church that's got it the first year, but a lot of them get it the second year. In every other state that we've helped churches, I've not seen that. A lot of them can get it the first year. Now, some states are more competitive than others, for sure. And it's not like there's hundreds of these available each year per state. It is a limited amount. But I want to give you a peek at what, we spent this money on a number of different things, but I want to give you a peek at our security system here. It is nighttime when I'm recording this, since all the cameras are black and white and grayed out. I counted right before I hit record here. I think we have 45 cameras that we purchased. Our camera features have a night mode where it looks like black and white, but you can see people better at night. Obviously, we don't have it enabled on this one right here because you can still see it in color. And then there's some places in our building where the lights stay on all the time, for emergency reasons, they don't come off. Our system happens to show you that that green line shows you where the person walked to and from. And if I scroll back far enough, we would find, let's see here, what dates are these? You'd find this is all midweek that I'm looking at here. But if I scroll back far enough, we would find a Sunday morning, with kind of normal traffic in there. So our system does cameras and alarms and doors are all controlled in one thing. And this isn't an advertisement for any one system. Obviously, we like ours. These are our doors, and you can attach cameras to each one, what camera is closest to it, and you can assign it so that you can see it. And then, we have cards for access. People can also use their phones. And then they have alarms, and they kind of build the system as if you have multiple sites for alarms. So that's our system. We did, do more with the money than just cameras, but that was the biggest. Cameras, alarms, and door control, access control were probably 80% of the money that we spent. I just wanted to show you that so you can get an idea of what you could get. Of all the churches I've helped, they've used a variety of different vendors and products for these types of solutions. and you'll figure out which one works best for you. But just to give you an example, we got the grant in 2023. It was announced in fall. We kind of still had to do some more work and do some more getting bids and estimates and all that. Got it installed in 2024 and been using it now for a good while now. So next steps. Number one, contact your state administrative agency. Find them on the FEMA website and then email them. You can just say, hey, I'm Nick. I work at Community Christian Church. We heard about the nonprofit security grant program. Would love to apply. What do I need to know? And then see what they'll tell you. Some states know more than others. There's a guy in our state who was new when we got it. So I definitely knew more than he did, in the beginning. And then he's been great. He got up to speed real quick. He's very knowledgeable, been very helpful for us as we got it. Get your UEI number. Go to sam.gov and get that. Do your vulnerability assessment. Again, are you going to do it yourself? Are you going to get a DHS person to do it? Local police, military, but get that done. Set a reminder for the notice of funding opportunity. At the time I'm recording this year, that part's already been announced, but you do want to set reminders or connect with your state to figure out what the state deadline is going to be. And then start working on an application. So I would recommend, obviously, if you can, and once the date gets announced and your state gives you the files, start using the official application. But if you want to get ahead of the game, you could always use an application from a previous year and save it, and then you'll copy paste, into the new one. And then last, consider getting help from us. We can help you and your church apply for the grant, give you the best chance possible at being approved while saving you lots of time and effort. I spent a lot of time on this and have been able to save churches a lot of time on it. You can absolutely do this yourself, but if you would like our help, you may have seen this because of a Facebook ad, and somebody commented on one of our ads one time that they applied for this grant and it was so difficult. They partnered with 12 churches in their city and no one was able to complete it. And my comment was, yeah, it's not easy, which is why I want to help. It is not easy, but it's not rocket science either. It's just, there's steps to it. You got to do it right. You got to not make simple mistakes. These are just churches we helped that actually got the grant. So here's Chris. We helped him apply for the grant. I believe Chris was in Virginia. Let's see here. I don't remember where Dana was, but helped her church get the grant. And they notice how I don't know if you can read this. I can barely read it sitting here, but $147,000 for one building, $127,000 for the other. I must have messed up as her guide because I would have told her apply for the full 150. I just told a church the other day, we're not going to waste money. Like, we're Christians. We are going to be good stewards of the money, no matter where it's coming from. But I've not met a church yet, no matter how small they are and how small the facility is, that couldn't spend the full 200 even now. I mean, it's 200, to secure their facility. This stuff is not cheap. So, and what I told the person the other day was, ask for 200. If you end up only spending 170, great. No problem. Your state won't, give you the other 30 and that money is saved, which is great. Brandon saying, we got it. Thanks for the help and the resources. Daniel just wanted to share the good news about getting approved for the grant. Daniel did a great job, by the way, with his application. Sometimes like somebody does so well, like one of the things we give you is a sample application, so you don't have to do it from scratch. And Daniel was one of the ones like, I need to ask him if we can use his in the guide because it was so good. Irene is actually the lady in Illinois that I mentioned. They got the fence around their property. So they got the grant, and Ada received the grant Friday. Heard the news on a Friday that the church was approved. So again, you can do this on your own. If we can help you, we can help you do it faster with probably better odds. So we've helped over 100 churches apply for the grant in 2024. They had 2 rounds. That's not normal, but in 2024, they had 2 different rounds. The first round, we helped about 50 churches, and all but 2 of the ones we helped got the grant. So I don't know what the math is on that, 96%. That's really, really good. Better than I thought. One of the ones that didn't get it was in Maryland. I told her, I just don't think Maryland likes giving us, I think there's a backlog and we got to go wait in line. And the other one was in Florida, but he did not do the review call with me. As part of the way we can help you is I do a final review with you on Zoom with your application, and we go through it. And I mean, at least half the time there's things I suggest people change. And a third of the time I would say that they made mistakes. Like there's errors, there's typos. And again, that can get you failed. So 2 churches didn't get it. I think the Maryland one will get it this time. And the Florida one, I'm going to review with them the next time. I think they'll get it. There was another round in November, December. We helped another 50 some churches then. That one they've not announced yet. And again, I just chalk this up. That's not normal. I mean, we are 7 months past then. They should have announced that by now. But even my state was saying, yeah, we don't know yet. We've not been told. I think it's all tied to the politics in terms of like what funding is getting approved. If you follow the news at all, there's been kind of more of a microscope on funding and what money's going to and all that kind of stuff. So I think those are going to get announced. That money was already allocated, but it hasn't gotten yet. So I'm very interested, to see how many of the 50 churches that we helped in November, December got it. They're still waiting to hear back. So you can click the button below to check out the Nonprofit Security Grant Guide that we can help you with. And in that guide, you get resources and coaching. So there's videos kind of like this walking you through every part of it. The application, the vulnerability assessment, getting pricing, getting your UEI, all those things. There's files in there, like you can see sample vulnerability assessments, sample UEI or sample applications, how-to instructions, links to resources, an exhaustive Q&A. I think we have like a 60-some question Q&A in there. I even made this past year some of you, I don't know how you feel about AI. Some of you might not like AI, but I built a custom GPT or whatever they call it, built on everything that is out there about the grant and then everything we know and have taught about the grant. And you can, if you just click it and create an account with ChatGPT, you can ask it questions and it's very good. Every now and then it'll tell me something that's like, that's not exactly right. And I'll tell it. And it's like, oh yeah, you're right. Cause it's just it's using the information we gave it and then current news and all that. In fact, I just updated it the other day with this year's notice of funding opportunity, but that's a great place to just ask quick questions. If the 60 some questions that are already there, don't hit the questions that you have. And then we have coaching calls. There's coaching calls you can join every week. There's one video you'll watch right away to get you started, tell you the 4 things you got to do and how to do them. And then there's coaching calls like Q&A, Q&A calls. And then you would schedule a call with me or somebody else from our team to review your application at the final stage to make sure you're good to go before you submit it. You're going to watch that onboarding video first, use the Q&A, the chat, join a Q&A call if you need to, and then schedule a call with our team to review your application before you submit it. So you always want to schedule that at least a few days before your state's deadline. The cost is $297 for that grant guide, access to all those resources and the coaching. You can click the button below to find that out, or you'll get emails about that. If you go after this on your own, that's awesome. You can totally do that. I know of churches that can do it, that have done that. If you want to use our help, just get the guide and watch that first video, get started with those 4 things and ask your questions there, join a call each week. It's up to you. Our goal is to help you. I noticed I should have shared my screen and showed you the application, but the application at the very top, it's very government to do this, but in the paragraph, I didn't even notice this until a year later when we were helping other churches with it. It says like it estimates 83 hours or something like that required to complete that form. And I laughed because I thought, man, it probably took me 83 hours, between getting the quotes and the bids and learning how it works and what not to do. But it doesn't have to take you 83 hours. So you may opt to do it on your own, which is awesome. If we can save you time, we can definitely make it faster than 83 hours. Get the guide. And especially, I think probably the thing we can help with the most is just increasing your chances. It's too many churches make mistakes. I helped a camp where they were one of the few people that heard about it before they found us, but they were denied. And right away, when we did a review call, I knew why. They shared their form, their screen, and I'm looking at a PDF of the application, but not in Adobe. They had opened it in some other document and it let them type in it. So I think they thought it was legit, but it wasn't. It wasn't. And I was like, right away, you get denied, which is unfortunate. I've worked with churches that the amount of money they ask for in this one description is different than the amount of money in the budget worksheet. Fail. I've worked with churches where the address here doesn't match the address there, or the name of the church used to be this and now it's this, and it's still the old name here publicly and to the government, and it's the new name in the document you're using. Fail. You know what I mean? Like just silly, goofy things. That one church in Florida that didn't get it, what I learned after reviewing with them, which they didn't do before, it was just light. It's just some of the paragraphs, sections where you're supposed to make your case was one sentence. It's like, I don't think you're going to get this grant if you don't make a good case. Like you're basically trying to make the case that yes, our church needs this money to prevent terrorist attacks and other things, and here's why. And you got to make a good case. You're not going to make things up, but you got to say all the things you possibly can. And we talk about some of the tips and tricks with that to get that. So if we can help you, check out that security grant guide. Go ahead and get that. Jump right in, do that first call, start working on the 4 things, join a Q&A call if you need to, and schedule the final review. If you do it on your own, I still would love to hear how it goes for you. Email me at nick@ministryboost.org. It'll take a while, once you apply, you still got to wait 3 months. I mean, we talked about how the winter application from this past year still hasn't heard about it, and 7 months later, but that's rare. Most years, normal timeline is FEMA says it announces it in March. Your state's deadline is like May, and they announce the winners in September. This year, because things are delayed, I'm expecting more of like FEMA already announced it, but they haven't said their deadline yet. So let's pretend their deadline is October 1st. Your state will make their deadline September 14th or something like that. I would guess they would then announce 3 months later. So like maybe February, that would be like a normal year. But we'll see. We'll see. You never know with the government. So we'll see. I hope this was helpful, whether you're using our help or not. I want your church to get this grant. And if you have any other questions, you can always email me at nick@ministryboost.org. Good luck.